guys, it's me, Wyatt Flores. Thank you guys so much for joining Wyatt Flores and Friends podcast. Today we have a special guest, Mike McClure, joining us today. If you don't know who Mike McClure is, well, basically he's a Red Dirt legend, also one of my biggest heroes. So this is a huge experience for me to get to sit down and talk to him. Yeah, we're just going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff and kind of the writing style of things. And yeah, we're just going to get into it. Anyway, thank you all for joining Wyatt Flores and Friends. We'll see you.
Yeah, that's the first time I'd heard you play and sing. You were like, hey, I want to play the song. And we went in the back lounge, the Star Lounge, as you know now. We went back in there and you played me some songs. I was like, holy cow, these are really good, man. You know? I remember telling your dad, because I've known him forever, it's like, man, Wyatt's got some really cool songs. I said, I'm not just saying that because I like you, you know? They're really cool. And I think that's when you met Mamie. I saw y'all exchanging some sort of... God, now I sound like an old doddering man. Snapchat.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. The Snapchat. Yeah, I saw that.
But
I was concerned.
I don't think it was me you had to worry about. I think it was Jevin. Oh, man. But, yeah, no, that was that the last time I seen you?
I think so. I saw you real briefly New Year's Eve. I think you came by the Great Divide show.
Yes.
I just saw you. I didn't talk to you. You did the in and out, I think.
Maybe. There's no telling.
Yeah.
But yeah, I couldn't remember if that was before or after. But no, I did see you at New Year's. Yeah, I had
well, it's good to see you again.
You as well.
Yeah.
But man. So gosh, I'm kind of at loss here because every single time I do see it, it's for brief moments. But yeah, opening up for y'all at Ponca City. Mm-hmm. That was back in 2021, I think.
Right. What was going on with you at the time? Like then you were just kind of...
I was trying.
Yeah.
It was just me and Jevin trying to play all the little bars, and then got that opportunity and did the national anthem. Shouldn't have. That is...
Nerve-wracking?
Nerve-wracking, but also, you know how it feels whenever you have like a 3-second delay because you don't have any ears or a monitor. And then you're like, I have no idea where I'm at anymore. But
it's difficult. We used to have to sing it at rodeos sometimes. I always just feared we'd start too high and then just be real ridiculous towards the end of it.
Yeah, it's not an easy song to sing.
No.
But now I remember that and finally getting to kind of ask you about songwriting. And you're like, man, I just go out there with the paintbrush and start painting the shed, and little things just start coming out.
Yeah, I think there's that part of, I'd heard it from like Guy Clark. He's one of my favorite songwriters, and him talking about throwing darts or just something that occupies that one side of your brain that needs something to chew on, then your creative side can be loosened up. And I used to write a lot. I painted houses when I was 17, 18, when I first started writing, and I'd get in some slow, repetitive motion, and then I'd get bored with that, and I'd just start talking to myself like we do, and just start babbling, and before I know it, I got a song I'm kind of working on, and this, whatever that, and sometimes it's driving, my hand's on the wheel, something to distract that part of my brain that overanalyzes, because once I get in a place of writing, it feels like there's this window that's open, and if I don't overanalyze it, I can let it come through. But at the minute I start going, I bet this is what I'm trying to say, sometimes I'll derail it. You know, there's that stream of consciousness that I like to try to catch, and I'll use any trick I can to ease into that. I remember hearing about Sturgill Simpson dropping or was it Tyler Childers? Somebody dropped a toolbox, and when he bent down to pick it up, a song started coming to him. It's kind of same thing. You're occupying one part of your brain, so your creative side can fly a little bit more.
Which now I'm fixing to start painting shit because I've never thought about it from that side. But
I've heard a lot of different people talk about that, and just getting and I know a lot of people write when they drive because you get bored, and of course, most people are texting and driving. And but I always found going on long drives, I just just out of boredom, you know. And I've tried taking and I'll have periods where I do good at it, but I'll take my cell phone and turn it off.
Yeah.
And I'll walk around, and I'm like, I'm scared to leave the house without it. So, you know, I'll leave, and then I've noticed that when I get bored, I reach for it. I just keep reaching for it. And if I don't have it on me, I might write a song.
Yeah.
You know, I might just start entertaining myself like I used to before I had a gadget that did it 24/7. You know, so that's been something I've been kicking around as a writer, you know. And, you know, life comes along and you got to have your phone for so many things just to get from point A to point B. But if you can have little sections of time, you know, I think it's a good thing for us as writers to get bored.
Yeah.
And sit with your guitar and get bored, because that's what spawned all of it. You know, I was living in Tecumseh, Oklahoma, being, you know, in my teens, and no internet yet. It hadn't been invented. And, you know, I'd get bored and I'd start making up a song or trying to figure out a song, you know, and that just spurs something new, you know, every time.
Yeah, because I remember sitting in tractors too and just...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, that's boring. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back and forth. And that's struck a lot of things, but I've never really sat there and thought about, just do something repetitive, make yourself bored. And honestly, now I'm going to go try that. But
get back on that tractor.
But that's definitely worked for me, is just because when you take all the other things out and all the boredom, and then you start getting bored, and then you start looking at things, your brain just kind of goes wild, and you start looking at different perspectives. And I don't know why that is, but I
think you just start, like when I was a kid, you know, I was creative as a kid to where if I got bored, you know, someone would always tell me that only boring people get bored, you know, like whatever. But it's kind of true. You know, I've always tried, anytime I do get bored or complacent, I'll try to invent something. You know, just start babbling and hope something, and try to mess with that babble, whatever it is. And, you know, one thing I used to always do writing was I'd go into a bathroom where a mirror was, and something about the mirror would distract me. It's like that same distraction thing. It's like, I'm not looking at myself going, oh, look how cool this is, but just like, I get to watching my hands, and it'll distract me in the mirror. Tom Skinner actually was, when he was in my band, I didn't really know Tom till he got in my band. And, you know, we spent 10 years together, and we'd be in a hotel, and we'd both be kind of jockeying for that bathroom. Like, let me in there. Because we both wrote into a mirror. Like, for some reason, there's some little, it's kind of like the paintbrush thing. There's some, it suspends something, you know, and it allows something else to come through. It's an interesting thing. I'm still fascinated by it. You know, I'm still trying to write, and I still am in love with the process of it, you know. And it's always been, what I like about your stuff is it's about you, you know, and it's personal. And that's what I've always tried to do. That's been therapy. It's been my therapy. And my therapy helps other people that hear it, and your therapy helps a ton of people that hear it, and it resonates, you know. When I was in my teens, I met Guy Clark. I bring him up a lot, but he was a hero, and I played a song for him. I was about 21. Great Divide had just went to Cowtown in Fort Worth. We played the White Elephant Saloon, and Larry Joe Taylor was playing up the street, and he said, "Hey, Guy Clark's in the crowd. Come meet him." I was like, "Oh, yeah." Took a break. We went up there, and Larry said, "After the show, Guy's going to pick some songs. Come around." I said, "Okay." So we were in there. It's just us and Guy Clark. He's playing the Randall Knife. He plays this Dublin Blues, L.A. Freeway, and he hands it to me and goes, "Play me a song." I was like, "All right." And he goes, "Play me the best one you wrote." And I played him one, and I wouldn't play it today for you. And it was okay. And he's like, "Yeah." And he takes it back, and he plays these other and just slaughters me with his songs. And he goes, "Play me another one." And so I played one, and it wasn't very good at all. And he goes, and slumps down. And I was just mortified, and I just sat there trying not to cry, you know. And so I'm leaving at about 5 a.m, and I'm going out the door, and he caught me, and he goes, "Hey," and he's kind of gruff guy, and he goes, "Hey, you're not showing your ass." And I go, what? He goes, you're not showing your ass. He goes, you write well, but you're not showing your ass. You're not showing me your vulnerability. He goes, you're not being honest. You're just writing words that you think people are going to like. And that was dead on. And from that point on, I started trying to show my ass, which I took. I was, write about stuff that's kind of hard to talk about, like your own pain and your own suffers and your own trials and tribulations that you get through, and that was one of the biggest days that ever happened for me as a songwriter, was someone I look up to that was honest with me and wasn't just like, oh, good job, kid, good luck to you. It's like, bam. And it was hard love, but in tough love, that's what I needed to hear.
Because you were 21 then.
Yeah.
So that means
you can hear our first album and just
going for broke, right?
Right.
So, but before then, you weren't even, from the stories that I've heard from my dad, there was another singer, right? And you were playing guitar, and you'd write all the songs and then have him sing it.
Well, when I moved to Stillwater, I was looking for an apartment. And I pulled in this complex. You know where Wicklow is? It's over by Brahms and the Swine Barn, which I found out later. But I rented this apartment because a guy said, hey, you like Pink Floyd? And I said, yeah. He goes, somebody painted the wall, a mural on this wall. He goes, I won't paint over it if you want to rent this apartment. And I said, cool. So I rented it, and that's the reason. And he wound up painting over it anyway. But I rented this room, and the neighbor next to us heard me playing one day, and he goes, I know some cowboys that have a band and they're looking for a guitar player. And I said, I'll go with you. I don't know anybody in town. I'm just trying to find something to do. And so he took me over there, and I played with them. They had another singer named Wade Tower, and they did like George Strait and all top 40 stuff. And I played a couple gigs and thought, I don't really feel this. I liked those guys all right. And it was different because I hadn't really been around rodeo cowboys, all that much like those guys, guys. So that I went and played and did a few gigs, and then I started writing about that time. I had a few songs that I'd written, but I really got serious and I wrote I'd Rather Have Nothing, and I thought, that's a good one. And so I rented a studio in Oklahoma City, and I called JJ because he was the only drummer at the time I knew. And I said, hey, will you come drum on this? I'll play bass and guitar. And this other kid named Bobby Grace is going to sing for us. He's a good singer I knew in town. And, that kind of didn't pan out. But we made that tape, and that tape got circling around, and we played a couple gigs in town. That's when cassette tapes would make you. And, and that kind of, people started knowing some of those songs on there. And then it's like, we need a band to promote this album, promote this hot cassette. And so that's what put The Great Divide together is I had these original songs and needed a band, and they had a band and needed original songs. Yeah. So we kind of came together like that. Good, and man. It was wild. It was a different time. That was 1992 when we came together, and Nirvana had just come along and stomp danced 80s rock that I was listening to, and then Garth Brooks came along and Clint Black, and I was really drawn to that. And then when I went to Stillwater, Garth was everywhere, and everybody talked about him and all this and that, and he seemed just like a mythical character. And then come to find out, Scott knew Garth, and Garth sang at Scott's wedding, and they were friends. And so Garth invited us to go out to Nashville. He sent a bus and picked us all up. And we never met anybody famous, much less Garth in the mid-'90s. He was huge. And so, we got to go out there and meet him at that time. That's when we first started coming out to Nashville and knocking doors and trying to get a deal ourselves.
Wait, so Garth sent y'all a bus?
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. Scott said, hey, they're picking us up in a bus at midnight at not Waffle House, but something like that, open all night, IHOP or something. Anyway, yeah, I'm sitting there at midnight thinking, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
When are you going to? But here comes tour bus, pulls up and drove us out there, and then we all went to Garth's and sat around and had dinner and played guitars in the basement, and I played him Rather Have Nothing.
Because he cut it, right?
Yeah.
On, what album was that?
It's called The Lost Sessions. Well, it was going to be on M Pieces, which was a huge record, and he cut it for that, and I went home, and he said, man, you care if I cut this? And I'm like, yeah, I'd like that. And yeah, he cut it, and I went home, and I told everybody I knew, Garth's cutting my song, man, and I was super excited about it. And then I had a message on my machine that said, hey, this is Garth. I cut that song, and Alan Reynolds, the producer, doesn't think it's going to make this album. I just want to let you know. Feel free to do whatever you want to with it. I'd like to hang on to it. And I said, okay. I thought that was it. Man, I was bummed for years. That was in 97. And then in 2005, I got a call from his lawyer that he was doing a box set and doing an album called The Lost Sessions, which was a bunch of songs he'd cut in the past that didn't make a record or whatever. And so that song finally appeared on there, which was a long time coming. It was cool. That was a neat experience. It was started in 96 and really didn't culminate until 05. And then now he's putting out another box set, which he puts out a lot of those.
Yeah.
But he's putting that song on this new one this year. So that'll be nice.
But as a songwriter, that's gotta.
Yeah, it's super cool because Garth was really got me in wanting to pursue country music.
Yeah.
Because I was playing rock and roll, and when I was in high school, the guy that plays drums for Seether, we went to high school together, and we had a little rock band, and we
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
What's the last name?
Humphrey. Why?
No kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry, my last drummer was his son Jackson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is crazy.
Oklahoma.
I know, right?
Oklahoma. Yeah, but he and I, he couldn't. When I was in high school, my dad gave us half of the garage, which was a big deal, and I got to put my music stuff out there, and John's dad wouldn't let him play drums at his house, and so he had a drum kit in my garage, and so we would just jam all the time. We went and we played at some high school dances, and yeah, that's kind of funny.
So
it's a wild world.
So I have honestly so many questions for you.
Go.
Because, same for Guy Clark. Like, for me, growing up, of course, I was raised with Scott and Kelly as well. I mean, Kelly was like a second father to me. And then Scott, I can't really say that he's
your
like
grandpa.
Yeah, he's like the grandpa. But, sitting there, I listened to all that music on the little tiny iPods, and or I'd grab my dad's because he had downloaded all the CDs y'all had and put it on the Toshiba computer and then burned it on or whatever, and so that was all I had was blues and y'all and George Strait because Mom, loved George Strait, but I've heard so many stories as a kid, and they've stuck with me. And then when it came to the actual songwriting and everything, I've been watching y'all since I was in diapers, or hell, even in the womb. My mom talks about stories of being at concerts, and she was like, I had to get out of there because they were hotboxing it with weed, and the crowd was too wild, and got to protect my baby. Anyway,
you were there though.
Yeah, I was there. And it's kind of like a full circle moment for me, just because I've watched y'all. And I've been to so many concerts, and I just remember sitting there looking up on stage and being like, well, how do I do that? And and then listening to all the songs, and then, as a songwriter though, like this album, I really tried to go off of Afterglow in certain ways of just, that's my favorite album.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
And, man,
that was a weird time, because we had been with Atlantic for 2 albums. And Atlantic was Nashville at the time, a lot of the labels were kind of going under, and Atlantic was in the middle of going under. And so it was a real weird crossroad because it felt like we went up and then they're gone and now, so I'm writing from this point of view instead of this one. you know. A lot of that album is, you know, Floods is on that record. That's one of my favorite ones, just about perseverance and, you know.
Yeah, that one's one of my absolute favorites.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, that album really inspired me for this album. Of just there's something to be said about being so simple, and I feel like I get caught in this whirlwind of trying to add so much to these verses, and sometimes my songs just have so many words that I have to calm down there for a second, let my ADHD simmer, so that way I can just be like, what actually needs to be said here? And I love how simple it is, and they're just great songs, and the way that you're able to get your message across in a verse that quickly. And I know exactly what you're talking about, or I'm able to perceive it into my life. It just really inspired me to go after that style instead of the stuff that I'd been on before, which was, you know, let's really just try and paint this imagery and man, it's just
I
really
love
helped.
that economy of words, you know, to where you can, you know, some of my favorite artists, Neil Young, you know, Bob Dylan, they could just slam it. You know, it's just a short, just word economy, you know. I love that, being able to say something that really hits in a simple way, you know, that's not complex, you know. Sometimes I'll try to write something, you know, just for fun, that's kind of complex or whatever, but I find the ones that really hit people are the simpler, you know, just hooked up to the truth.
Oh, yeah. And there's a whole lot of truth in that album.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a soul-searching time, you know. Floods came out of trying to heal myself, and like, even if this flood is and the dam is breaking, man, bring it on.
Yeah.
You know, we got to go through this, whatever this is. And that album, you know, we didn't really have a budget. We rented the Will Rogers Theater and brought our own gear in, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Goodness.
we didn't know what to do. And but Danny Miller, you know, Miller Pro Audio. Well, Danny started with us back in the day. He had one truck and a little rat tail. I always like to mention that. And but yeah, he built that sound company he was our front of house guy for a while. But he brought all this gear in, and we had foam everywhere. Like, it's just a theater. You know, we just rented the space and we recorded in there.
That's freaking awesome.
That was that record. It went out and mixed it in Nashville. And then wound up getting on Broken Bow Records with it. And, you know, they had just started. They had Jason Aldean and a few other people. And to me, after being on Atlantic, it felt like a step down. And then that kind of started a lot of the turbulence in the band, is trying to, I don't know, figure our way out of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you go through a lot, and you've already been through so much already. It's a hard place to be in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's the only place I want to be in, you know. It's and if I can just remember when I'm going through some rough patch, like, there's going to be some good songs in here. You know, if you can just get through it and try to look at it. And we're lucky. We get to look at it from an artistic point of view and try to make it make sense. And then if it makes sense for us, it'll resonate, you know, if we show our ass. It'll resonate. But, you know, Guy Clark was saying in that was if you get in there and affect yourself, it'll ripple out to other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, to me, a lot of Red Dirt is, you know. Nobody really sounds the same in it. You know, I don't think so. It's not really a sound. It's kind of a way of being, you know, as far as a way of expressing yourself that's honest about you, you know, honest about me, and what we're going through.
And it's a tough place to be in when you sit down with a piece of paper and you're just fixing to tell things to the world, what no one ever wants to say usually, you know, and being
it might be why I tell it to the mirror, you know, like I'm easing into it or something. I don't know, but it's a wild spot to be in, and you know, I struggle with it, and I'll get to some point in my life where I'm just beat down. Something's beat me down, and then you can't throw in the towel, and then like that line or two, something comes that helps just turn it. It's like tumblers falling into place. You know, it helps turn whatever you're going through into some. It's spinning lead into gold.
Yeah.
You know, trying to.
I've always seen it as golf because I'm not good at golf, but every now and then you'll get one shot.
Yeah.
That just straight down the middle.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I can keep playing. Look at that. That was a good shot right there. And then you finish out the rest of the game. But, man, it is.
Yeah, I get on the green and take 10 putts, though. You know.
I'm the same way. Yeah. Goodness. But it's, I don't know. I'm glad that you said that about Red Dirt, though, because it's never really been the sound.
Yeah, because like Bakersfield, there's a sound. You can hear Bakersfield sound. The Seattle grunge, there was a sound to it. Red Dirt, I don't think there's a definable sound at all. Because there was, I'd hear Tom Skinner, Bob Childers and those, and I'd hear Jason Boland and Stoney and Ragweed came along, and they didn't sound anything like each other, and that was some of the original bands out of that. And that era, and we Great Divide, we didn't sound like anybody. No. Maybe Steve Earle, we were trying to.
But in that time period, when was it that you started realizing that it was really becoming the Red Dirt scene?
The first time I heard the word Red Dirt, Great Divide, we bought our first PA at Daddy O's, and Brad James.
I remember Mike Shannon.
Yeah, Brad worked for Mike there, and he came over and hooked our PA up and showed us how to run it. And to test it out, he played Used to Be and Restless Spirits by Bob Childers, the other one by Tom Skinner and Bob Wiles. And I said, man, those are cool songs. Well, whose are those? And he goes, oh, that's Red Dirt. And I was like, what's that? And he said, that's the music scene around here. And at the time, it was just at the farm.
Yeah.
And before them, though, it was Steve Ripley. The guy from the Tractors, he also was with Leon Russell, played lead for Bob Dylan, built guitars for Eddie Van Halen. I mean, his story is crazy.
Well, yeah, the COVID and all that, but the farm, like I don't know, I've always viewed that place as almost like a sanctuary in my mind. And
it was for me. When I first moved to Stillwater, I'd kind of come out of that rock scene with John Humphrey, and we played rock, and then to be able to come there and start hearing the songwriters, it's like, damn, these are cool lyrics, and I like good lyrics. I didn't really know that, because the 80s didn't have a whole lot of great lyrics. But that's where I first got into Red Dirt, and that was in 92, 93. So that scene was already going, and then when Great Divide got a record deal, and then Cody came, and he was going to be in the Great Divide for a hot minute. And we played a few gigs and, decided, you should probably start your own band. That's the other guys in the band, not me. And, so he started Cross Canadian Ragweed, and then he was friends with Stoney, and then that all kind of got that part of the scene,
Yeah, really fired off. I mean, my dad even tells me stories of him asking Cody when he was 18 years old, hey, you want to come sing in our band? And I think I'm going to try this band out for a little while longer.
Yeah, but it kind of seemed like something was happening. And so everybody came to town. And I remember growing up reading, I was going to say about the farm, is that was like, when I was in college, I got On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and it was really influential on me just about, his traveling and going out and living life. And it was the first kind of taste of like a bohemian lifestyle of everybody was a painter or a poet and all that was going on. I'd never been around that, Tecumseh, Oklahoma was a small town, kind of conservative town or whatever. And then to be around a bunch of people that they brought out that spirit in me, I've always been drawn to that kind of freedom and the stuff that goes with all that, and the art and all the songs and the creation and all the beauty in that. I felt like that was this magical vortex there in Stillwater, that all these people came and I was studying it. That was my college. I went to college there, but the farm was really, because there was great songwriters, and Robert Earl Keen might stop in there on his way through town, and Jimmy LaFave was kind of the local kind of Red Dirt hero. He'd come in from Austin once in a while, and there'd be this buzz, Jimmy's out at the farm, or and that was intriguing, as a young songwriter. And those guys were open to me, which was big, because like rock scene in the 80s, everybody was trying to step on each other's throats, and just kind of the way it was. And to be somewhere to where, like, you know, Great Divide to get Ragweed to open for us somewhere, and or Bowling, take them down to Stephenville, Texas, or Fort Worth, and everybody'd help each other, you know? And then now you're doing that with Great Divide, getting us out here at the Ryman. You know what I mean? That's crazy. It's cool.
How does it feel? Like,
it's man, it's kind of hard to wrap my brain around, because I was thinking about it on the way out here. I passed a sign that said "Home of the Grand Ole Opry," and I'm driving out, just going. I remember seeing that sign, driving out here and sleeping in my car and getting nothing done for years, you know. And to be able to after all this time, break up, make a record, kind of have a little resurgence, and then to come back and get to do that, it's beautiful.
And it's
cool. And I thank you, dude. Man, you made it happen.
This wouldn't have happened without y'all.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Goodness. No, it's one of those special places, though, the farm, where I feel like, and I don't want to, you know, say anything too harsh, because I haven't been at home in a really long time to really see. Because when I do go home, I start staying hidden these days. But, you know, like the music scene just kind of feels like it's, I guess in that area, it just doesn't feel like it's really blooming like it used to. Like, there's still bands out there that are trying to get a start, and I think it comes in waves.
Yeah. You know, I really do. I think it comes in waves, because I remember, like, when Great Divide was trucking along there, and then kind of like this, so here comes Ragweed, like the second wave up over it, and it's like, oh crap, I guess they're bigger than we are now. And then, you know, there'd be this way, and then, you know, Stoney and Bowling with these big waves, and then all of a sudden here comes a tidal wave of Turnpike Troubadours, and then you, and then it's just a continuation of waves, and it has to crest for a little while, and then I think it rises back again. Someone will come through there. It's just, there's something about that town, you know, and I think it's a good place for people from small towns to move to and get a taste of a little bit of community. Used to be that way, you know. I don't know about now.
I think that's where I'm trying to bring it back.
Yeah.
And I'm still, you know, going to the drawing board, figuring out.
You know, honestly, Stillwater was a hard town to get people to listen in.
Yeah.
It really was. Super hard town. Even now, I can go somewhere and play, and it'd probably be loud as hell in there if I was just playing acoustic.
It's a tough crowd.
It's a tough town in that way, and I see people get eat alive by it, you know, and I've often thought about, like, our music was kind of an answer to that, because it was a little, you know, kind of somehow getting up over that crowd that was talking.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really a listening town.
Nah.
There's pockets of it, but even back in the day when all this red was going on, is everybody that went out to the farm and hung out, you know, it was just a natural, organic thing out there. It wasn't like there's this cool bar where you're going to go listen.
Oh yeah,
it just didn't exist.
We still do pop-up shows at the Bronx every now and then when we're staying there. I'll ask the band if they want to go play, and you know, it still gets loud in there.
Yeah,
it's just one of those scenes, and I think that's what helped me in the future of going and playing in front of a whole bunch of people, is just because of playing the little bars in Oklahoma. And
if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. It's tough, you know. It wasn't like there's people just sitting there just hanging and waiting on your words.
Yeah.
You had to get them across.
Which was like the weirdest feeling for us when we left the scene, I guess, or Oklahoma and Texas. And then you go to places like Denver or North Carolina, and they're as quiet as a mouse. And you're sitting there going, did we do something wrong?
Then it's disconcerting. Yeah, it's like,
I swear I played 90% of the right chords on that last song.
Like my wife and I, we have our Crow and Gazelle folk duo, and we'll go play rooms, and that's pin drop quiet in there. And it's a different feeling, you know, because I grew up where I got comfortable with noise. You know? I was just banging along, and but I love those rooms, and I love going up north. It seems the farther north I go, the more people are quiet and they're really listening, and that's just the truth.
That just checks out.
Yeah, that checks out. I think some of it too is I think they're more starved for music up north than say down south.
Yeah.
Oklahoma and Texas, there's 9 million bands, and not all of them go up north. So if you do go up there, they appreciate it, and they're there quiet and they're listening, and they make you nervous.
Like Cheyenne, Wyoming was one for me where I was like, these people are like really excited and they're rowdy for the right songs, and then we'll play something that's softer and quieter, and they're right on you the entire time, and you're like, what is happening here? Because this is also a cowboy town. Mm-hmm. What's happening?
Yeah. I just think it's farther north. There's something about it.
But it's still
great. There's pockets everywhere where there's listening rooms, and that's what Crystal and I have been trying to find is listening rooms to where, like, here, I'm here to give these lyrics to you, and I want you to hear these lyrics, to where, like, a Great Divide gig, they're in there, but there's also this going on, it's just two different animals.
It is. And, man, I love it when we do acoustic stuff, though, because then it really focuses in, and it's not just, where we're trying to convey energy out of people by playing louder and, more rock and roll stuff.
And playing the song they know.
Yeah.
That's, sometimes I even struggle now with playing a new song that people don't know. And I have to consciously get into that song a little more because it's easy. You play a song, everybody, woo, how easy is that, It's hard getting up there playing newer stuff or something, I still walk the line with that.
Even with this album, one of the songs is "Oh Susanna," and we don't even say a word about it, but we go straight into it. Like as soon as the one stops, the next one starts, and they don't even get the chance to applaud. Yeah, we don't even give them that because they're like, "Wait, what's happening now?" And just because I know how that goes of trying to play something new, and it's like, well, I wrote this song about this, and they're sitting there going to the beer line, and it's like, all right. Yeah, that's an interesting part. I remember asking a long time ago when we were first getting going, and people were really responding to some of, like, either Pour Me a Vacation or whatever, people responding to that. And I can remember seeing Robert Earl asking him, like, man, what do you do when you want to try to do these other songs? He goes, when you figure that out, you tell me. So I'm, not the only one to have to struggle, with that. It's
but it's, you put it out on a record and let them know it. And then the next time they come, it's not easy to get new ones across.
No.
Which is part of the challenge too, because like with Great Divide, we hadn't recorded a record, and we ain't done a record in 20 years, and then to have a song get on the radio again, and then seeing people sing that back, it's like, okay, it's just hard.
Yeah,
they will sing it back. It's just, that's interesting.
Kind of, I mean, the whole thing with social media, that's all people do is just try and get in front of each other. Yeah. Just keep posting and posting and posting. And
I kind of stepped off of that train. My wife helps keep the social media part going, but I don't know. It burned me out. I don't, there's so much you have to do now. I don't know.
Yeah. Cause you were doing that over COVID, I think, right?
Yeah. COVID, Facebook Live kept me alive. It did. But just playing and people tipping, and people tipped above and beyond just because they knew, we weren't working, we couldn't work, and that's actually when I first started discovering my wife could sing, because I'd be playing in there doing a Facebook Live, I'd hear her in the hall singing harmony. I'm like, come in here and do that. And that's what started our group, was the Facebook COVID shows. Then like, get in here. Now she's got a drum and
just having a heck of a time.
COVID brought that about, because I didn't even know. So that's kind of cool. I mean, that was definitely weird times. Did you do Facebook Live shows?
I did a couple Facebook Lives, but most of it was Instagram or TikTok. And I'd find another phone laying around, I'd log into it, and then I'd just set them both up so I could do them both at the same time. And I guess there's more professional ways to do it, but that was all I could do. But other than that, COVID, I wouldn't say that I was part of the problem, But for the places that were still open, I mean, no one was buying tickets to come see me. But I was definitely going to every bar that was still open and still had, a little bit of a music scene, and there'd be no one in there. Yeah. It's COVID. But
right.
Yeah, I just played that entire time and just started getting used to going to bars. Like COVID was kind of what helped me shape up a little bit and kind of get in the whole system. But, that's also driving yourself around the entire weekend by yourself and just trying to find people that'll listen.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly grateful for COVID. I think that really helped this music scene come back to life in its own way. And at the same time, TikTok took off completely, and it makes it challenging if you're not in front of it. But at the same time, it's the one thing that bought me some time to just go have fun playing music live and get better at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating especially because I remember when our first record we got 2,500 cassettes, 2,500 CDs, and that was the whole shebang. And then you just went out, and it seemed like there was a way to. Just seems like the way to do it just keeps evolving and keeps changing. And I'm so fortunate that we got out enough in the old days to have a name to where I'm not trying to make it as a new artist now. Yeah. I'm sure of course I'd be younger and I'd figure it out. But it was the Wild West for a while.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, COVID was interesting because that was the first time, and a lot of my friends too came off the road. I've been on the road since I was 21. Every weekend at least, and then a lot more in between. And so that was the first time I was there for weeks on end. I started gardening, growing microgreens, and it was kind of cool. It just let me see that there's more to life than just running up and down the road, although I love it. It's taught me some balance, and I'd get out on the road and get out of balance back when I drank and did drugs, and now I do yoga and meditate, and it's a different world. It's finding that balance outside of this music thing because it becomes us.
Yeah.
Every bit of it. And so to be able to step out of that and breathe and become grounded again and step away and let all of it step off for just a few hours a day, it's been really big. And that's something I've been working on. I've been sober for 5 years, from alcohol and any kind of drugs that isn't weed. And that's made all the difference for me. That was a lot of the problems in the Great Divide, is we all drank too much, and it's hard to deal with the things you need to deal with when you're drunk. It doesn't work. And I definitely tried it, and now I see that through going through that and finding grounding and positive things, that spills over to the Great Divide. And when I'm in there, there's this love thing going on again, which what started, a big love fest of us, felt like us against the world, and going out. And, I saw Honeysuckle Rose in 1981, that I was 10, and it's a movie Willie made. And, it's just about him being a musician, man, seeing that's what I wanted to do. And Great Divide helped me do that,
I want to say thank you for reaching out when I took my break in February.
Yeah.
That meant a hell of a lot to me, and really the whole balance thing.
Yeah. Well, I heard what you're going through, and I saw she showed me what you had written on social media, and I was like, yeah, I understand. And it's hard to find that balance because, and especially you went out there like a shot, like wham. Ours was this slow build up into it, but man, you got thrown out there.
Well, like you were saying with the whole music thing and how it consumes you, that's kind of where I was at. And then you kind of start looking around one day, because I started drinking less because I was making so many bad decisions. I mean, you've seen it all. You've been on the road, and I just kind of woke up one day and just started looking around, and I was like, what is all this?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find distractions for myself. So
Yeah.
I don't have to face what's actually going
That's
on.
it. It's all distractions.
Yeah.
From your phone to beer to, everything's a distraction. People clapping for you. That's all a super distraction. And I've found grounding through meditation of just sitting for 10 minutes a day. If I know when I don't, of just shutting my brain down and breathing and just focusing on my breath. That calms me down. And then I try to do 20 minutes of yoga every day down on the mat. And that's all calming and grounding. And I take that with us when we're traveling. And that's kind of my home.
Yeah.
It's like home is that place of peace that you can find. And it's hard to find on the road, but I think you have to have these kind of rituals, for lack of a better term, of like, okay, I'm going to roll this mat out. I'm going to be down there on the floor and my phone in here, and I got 20 minutes and I'm going to ground in. And there's something about that of shutting off everybody else's input into. That's what happens. Yeah. Everybody just flooding you with input, and you got a phone with 87 missed messages and interview, and hey, here's a club owner. She loves you. Look out. There's a lot going on, and especially for you, mine is hectic these days, but still I get, toasted by the road, but I know if I can return to my home, which is my center, I can find that anywhere on the planet.
Yeah.
And that took me a long time, and it took, finding love with my wife. She taught me these tools. I had no tools. I was just bull in a china closet trying to get through life, And she met an animal of a man about 5 years ago, and then through that, for me, sobriety and doing those practices every day is really just calming down. Things are okay, you know. And I try to, and I can, by meditating, I'm able to have better thoughts, better control. I notice my thoughts more. Yeah. When they start going to some negative thing or some overwhelming thing or something that just sucks.
Yeah, and I haven't quite gotten into the whole meditation thing, but while I was at on-site on my break, they did that every morning, and I actually enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was not having music. Mm-hmm. I think I might have some issues with having music constantly playing. If I'm doing anything, there's got to be music just playing in the background. And then I started realizing that if I've started doing this where I don't listen to music when I'm sleeping, and it's just dead quiet. Yeah, and it's like
that's good.
It's
good for
been
your
like
brain.
A weird deal, but
I think part of your brain, even when you're sleeping, is analyzing.
Oh yeah,
and I'm guilty of putting on some sort of something and listening. It used to be Forensic Files, and my wife talked me out of listening to that to go to sleep. She's like, "You gotta quit listening to murder stories," and that didn't even dawn on me. Like, oh, you're right, because your brain is. Yeah. And I really think being off by yourself, because you got to be by yourself and alone in some situation to allow yourself to come back to yourself, because you get splintered. Yeah. All those distractions just splinter you. And, but that chance to come back. And anytime I get stressed now, I know it, and I'll fill my stomach with breath. And I'll just kind of do that, and I'll just focus on that breath for a while, and then I'll calm my nervous system down. And before, I'd get disturbed, and it'd just start turning, and then I'd drink a beer and look out. Yeah. I couldn't control my emotions. I couldn't control my actions. Now I'm in control, and it feels like a superpower. Yeah. Just walking along, and people are, hey, how you doing? Drinking. I'm like, hey, man, I'm good. I'm working.
Yeah. My manager William, he's been sober for 12 years now. I think, since last week. And
congratulations, William.
Yeah, but it's kind of hearing from his stories and everything. It's helped me. Like I'm not saying that I need to quit, and I don't plan on quitting, but it's more so just trying to find the control through it, and definitely put periods or. When you're working, you're working. Yeah. When you're not, that's when you can. And,
and that's a hard one to do. Man, I couldn't do it.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's some can. You know, I wasn't one of them. You know, I couldn't. You know, it controlled me, and it runs in my family. You know, there's alcoholics in my family, and I'll just see the damage that it did, and I just see the positive of not doing it. You know, not to come on and be Debbie Downer, but
no. I mean, that's literally
it's truth. Yeah, it's something I've learned, and it's something that's made my life better, and I'm more suited to not come apart on the road now because I can ground, and I can step away even when there's been a lot of crazy shit going on in my family and stuff, that I can come out here and still be here and be present with you.
Yeah.
And that presence is the hard thing to learn, because we're always kind of, what am I going to say next? And where are we going next? And to be just, whoosh, you know, it's that's something I work on and have been working on. You know, it's interesting.
It's definitely, I'm glad that you bring that up, because I was just apologizing to my girlfriend last month of I had no idea she was going to come into town. I thought she was coming in the next day. So I went and hung out on the lake with all my friends since I got to go home that weekend. And she ended up showing up that night. And shoot, I was 3 sheets to the wind. I wasn't acting bad. I was just being stupid. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, I was just apologizing. And she's like, you have nothing to apologize. You were hanging out with your friends and everything. And it's like, no, but when I have my time with you, I want to be fully locked in. I don't want to. And that's what I always loved about my manager, William, being sober, is because I'm like, he remembers everything that we've ever done. When we go out, he knows exactly what happened the entire time. There's not a question of what did we do, you know?
Yeah, I'm missing years. You know, I'm missing chunks of years, honestly.
And that's where it kind of
damn near decade, you know,
dawned upon me of like, man, I need to chill the fuck out on it.
Yeah,
because
it's so easy, you know. It's just Ray Wiley Hubbard's got a tune that said, "Such a sweet temptation, it gives such a brief relief. It's such a false sensation. How come that's so hard to believe?" You know, that's pretty heavy.
That's pretty
I love Ray Wiley. Yeah.
But
he's another sober guy. He used to talk to me about sobriety. He was seems like he was Stevie Ray Vaughan's sponsor at one time.
Okay.
Ray Wiley, yeah. Oh. And he'd talk to me here and there, and I'd be like, man. One day, you know, it's all just seeds, you know.
Then it starts, and then
and just plant that. He planted that seed, and I just kind of kept it in the back of my mind, and I just kept not quitting, and just kept getting worse and worse. It's pretty easy,
man.
It's hard.
I'm happy. 5 years.
Yeah,
shit's hard to do.
Yeah. It's made me a lot happier person. Just because one, it's a depressant.
Yeah,
you know, and I drink a lot. And you drink a lot of depressant, you're gonna get depressed.
Yeah.
And I used it as a distraction. I used it as a coping mechanism that I ultimately had to learn on my own. You know, I ultimately had to learn to be comfortable in a room without a drink.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still working on that. I mean, it's gotten a lot better. I've just realized you just got to show up and be you and be present.
Yeah.
You know,
and I mean, Dan even taught me, Lieutenant Dan.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Jackson.
Uh-huh.
When I did go on a little break from drinking, I told him that I wasn't, and I just wanted to go into a bar and just to see how that felt. And that was an odd thing, but he filled me up a colorful drink of nothing.
Yeah.
And he was like, just tell people you already got one.
Yeah.
And I was like, smart idea, man.
I've done that. I drink those Heineken Zeros. I like to taste beer. Just alcohol turns me into a jackwagon. And that's just the truth.
It'll happen. Man, it will.
You know, I never really wrote much when I drank. You know, I'd smoke pot, honestly, and that kind of would put me in a place of liking to write.
Yeah.
You know, it's always just, as soon as I take a hit of THC, I just, something. I don't know. It's always done that. So I used that, and But alcohol, really, I didn't really write much. But for a while, I had been into speed, and God dang, I wrote a lot on that. And I wouldn't advise it, but it's like all the things I sampled all of them, and mainly because my heroes were drug addict lunatics. Growing up, I idolized Keith Richards and Jimmy Page and Ozzy and Willie Nelson. Not that Willie's a lunatic. I'm not going to say that anywhere. But as far as creativity, I find that I'm getting deeper into because I'm not, like I might have got a buzz before and started writing, but I only got to the surface because being messed up and being too altered, I couldn't get all the way down to me, and that is the me that I have to find without anything, really, without anything. And that comes more and more the more clear that my mind becomes from pulling out of the honky-tonk fog, as Ray Wiley calls it. Pulling out of that, I feel like my creativity's gotten sharper.
Yeah.
But I look back I love some of my stuff I've written. I look back and think, well, I was flying pretty high when that came down the pike, So I'm not saying the drugs wrote the song, but they kept me up while I did,
Yeah. Goodness. Man, I do have to ask you about this, though. Tom Skinner.
Mm-hmm.
I never got to meet him. But just, knowing the stories of just his significance on the scene. Mm-hmm. What made you want to go and record Used to Be?
Well, that was the very first Red Dirt song I ever heard. Brad played that thing, and I just thought, that's so cool. There's no chorus. How does this even work? And so I learned it, and then we started playing it, and I kind of came up with that little funky riff for it. And then while we were in Austin, we told Lloyd Maines, who's our producer, that, hey, we know Jimmy LaFave. He's like, oh, get him in here. So Jimmy came in and sang that middle verse. And that was pretty cool because we all looked up to Jimmy, but yeah, that's why we recorded that one. And then, when I went solo there for 10 years, Tom came out and played bass for me. He was just going to cover one gig, and it turned into 10 years. He was that older guy that showed me how to use a capo, encouraged me, made me feel like I was a songwriter.
Yeah.
And I saw that he was a songwriter, and that was a occupation you could pick. Even if you didn't get rich doing it, he'd still made a living.
Yeah.
And accepted whatever that living was. And that became a good ethos for me as far as like, go make your music and then set your life around what that brings.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the map that I saw Tom have, and to varying levels of success. But, he was just an inspirational guy, and those are the first people I met that said, I'm a songwriter.
Yeah.
When these songwriters where I live, somebody might have banged around with their cousin or whatever. But
well, I just want to say, Mike, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
On this podcast that is unnamed still, but I
like that fact.
Yeah. No, it has meant the absolute world. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And once again, thanks for repping our old Great Divide band, man. That means a lot. You talk full circle. We brought that up a lot, but this is truly full circle for us, and for you to help facilitate that means a lot.
And it means the world to me.
Yeah, thanks.